Okay, well, we have a discussion today about something that I think is extremely important in this business, in the business of vinyl production, and that is sustainability and new technologies involved in record production. So we're not going to say vinyl production because it's no longer just vinyl production. There are other materials being used, and we're going to talk about that. So welcome to our panel. We have a very, very good panel this morning, and I appreciate all of you coming here this morning to participate. Sven Deutschmann, you're with Sonopress, and you've innovated a way of making records using PET, and that's injection molded. And Dr. Peter Runge, did I pronounce it pretty well?
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. And you're with Optimal Media, one of the big producers of vinyl records here in Germany. And Florian Kaps, you are an all-around vinyl guy, lacquer guy, and analog guy. And among your credits is reintroducing Polaroid film to the world, correct?
That's true, yeah.
And you have a all analog store in Vienna that everybody who goes to the show next year in Vienna is welcome to attend, taking numbers.
I think the whole show will be in my building, hopefully.
And Andreas Kohl, you and I got together. You survived a ride with me from Berlin to the Optimal plant,
Yes.
and you're still here to tell about it, so I appreciate that. And you're involved with the Vinyl Alliance and a number of other organizations that I don't fully understand, and we'll talk about that later.
Okay.
And I appreciate your coming for this. And so let's just talk about the general subject of sustainability and the responsibility of energy use in the production of records. Because I think I've found that a lot of young people I talk to are probably more concerned about that than a lot of the older folks are, because they just want their vinyl, and the younger people look at the ecology and the aspects of that in the production of records, and they're concerned about their futures, which are going to go on a lot longer than our futures. So first, tell me about Sonopress, and aside from the technology of injection molded records, what is the energy use in your project and what you do?
Yeah, maybe thank you for the introduction, Michael. This is great being here, and welcome to the audience. And first of all, maybe 2 words about Sonopress. We are in the injection molding industry, mainly for CDs, DVDs, Blu-ray, and all the optical data. And before that, as you know, for data carriers, vinyl records have been our legacy from the very beginning, from 1958. And we have been in the manufacturing of vinyl records for more than 30, 35 years. And then, due to the development of the industry, everything was, of course, as we know, developing in the world of the optical disc data. And we stopped manufacturing vinyl records for a period of 30 years, and then going back into this world. And to your question, what about the energy impact? First of all, as industry production, is it vinyl records, is it whatever, optical disc or injection molding as such, is very much energy intense. So I think it would be wrong to say this is by definition a sustainable technology. Everybody uses energy by large. Of course, you can mitigate this by lots of initiatives like solar panels on the roof and others. But first of all, it's machine-based, it's a production process, and this requires energy, different sources. And the optimization of energy as such was, from our perspective, in the focus, even before sustainability discussions have come up. Why? Because it's money, it's cost. And from the cost perspective, everybody was looking for reducing energy impact. And what we have seen is, and this goes all along the chain, and if we look to the manufacturing equipment, injection molding machines and all the other techniques, they have been under a very good development of machine engineering initiatives to reduce energy impact. And we can say that if you follow the energy focus on the development of those machines, it has been decreased significantly by the engine and machine manufacturers over the last decades massively. And this is a good development. So if we compare injection molding machines, they are fully electrically based without any natural gas or other input source energy data. the good development is that this has decreased quite significantly. And this goes in line with demands, as you say, from consumers, but also from music artists. So in general, we can say it's a very positive development that this is going all through the levels to have energy reduction in the focus. So we would say, yes, this is very much an important issue on this.
Great. And so, Dr. Runge, your company does everything from printing to vinyl production to digital disc production.
Well, I started in 1991 with CD production, and we invested in vinyl production then in 1995, and it grew ever since, especially vinyl. And what comes to the sustainable side is that we are installing new boilers every few years, and the newest ones, they usually run on gas or oil, whatever is available. But we can additionally use electricity when enough, like green electricity is available, and real green electricity when the sun shines or the wind blows, not some green energy plan where you get energy with a, like say, low yield made out of coal in the night or during periods of no wind. So in those periods, we use gas because it's way more efficient to burn gas in the boiler directly with 100% yield than to use electricity to heat up water. And the electricity has been made with a yield of 60% in some power station in a remote location you don't know. So that is the one thing. And then when it comes to energy consumption, the other thing is that we reuse the excess heat, that we need less energy to cool down the presses. When the record is made, you need to cool it down. And we can cool down using the concrete core activation in our warehouse buildings. And we reuse the excess heat to heat the offices, the warehouses, everything around. So we have a very small footprint when it comes to the energy of the pressing process. And the PVC itself has a lower footprint than PET or other plastics when you make it in Europe, not when you make it in Asia, obviously.
So you make it, your pellets come from a European source?
They come from Europe only, and we use like pellets made of fossil oil pre-products. We use pellets to make the same records made of bio-based PVC. And then we have a product that's called revinyl, and that is 100% reground like scrap from vinyl production, post-production scrap that we give our scrap records to a company next door. They regrind it, and we use it to about 75-80% of the record will be a new record.
Oh.
And the rest is not burned. It goes into construction materials like floor mats or, as it's called, Bakenfuß.
So you recycle as much as you can, and
Yes,
very little gets
we do.
thrown away. And so when you put a boiler in, you consider how efficient it is.
Yeah.
And so over time, let's say a boiler still has 5 or 8 or 10 years of use, but you see there's a new one on the market that's extremely more efficient. Is there a time when you say, well, let's just exchange that for a new one, even though the old one still works?
Yeah, it is a time because the newest boilers are almost twice as efficient as the old ones. So it pays off immediately.
Yeah.
And we are like ready to go 100% renewable electricity whenever really 100% renewable electricity is available by enough buffering in the grid. Then we would be able to switch immediately and use no gas anymore.
Oh.
And we would be willing to invest.
Yeah.
But the grid is not stable enough for that.
Okay, thank you. So Florian, so you're kind of the freewheeler here. You were involved in a whole bunch of different things. So what do you bring to this conversation? What do you want to talk about?
It's very loud. So first of all, why I'm sitting here is because when we bought the last Polaroid factory in 2008, everybody said, okay, who is still interested in that? It's the old romantic freaks But what happened then is that the young generation, surprisingly, fell in love with Polaroid film. And since then, I see myself as the guy taking care of transforming an old technology into the future and targeting a young generation. And most importantly, a young generation that doesn't know anything about records. And so I started 10 years ago to focus on records. And I discovered that nobody in the world knows how a record is produced. Not even the label executives have any idea.
Especially the label.
Especially. So discovering the whole world, I said, in order to really invent the record of the future and targeting the new generation, we have to start completely from the scratch. Because, the last invention, the real innovation is from the 50s. Even if there are some new technologies, the whole concept is from the 50s and it never has been radically rethought. And I see that's our job. So instead of telling numbers and approaches and percentages, we said we simply produce in front of the people's eyes. So we create a new kind of technology that solves all the big problems, that even gets the production out of the industry into the living rooms, into the studios. Everybody should watch. And we didn't even have to invent new technologies also, but the first process is always cutting a record. So I think that's the most beautiful thing you can do, is just invent new technology that you can cut records. And this also solves the problem of the substrate of, because the vinyl is the best to press it, or also injection molding, it needs super clean plastic in order it works. And then also injection molding, I think for singles it has been around for a long time, but in a larger size. But cutting a record, it solves all the problems, not just about the production, but you can produce very close to the client. You can produce on demand. You can cut all different kind, even 98% recycled plastic from local sources. So that's the approach we are
You're
trying
talking
to
about
celebrate.
direct, like dub plate cutting directly to a piece of plastic?
Exactly. But, we invented basically our core technology that we invented and patented is new cutting lathe. So we developed from the scratch new cutting heads, all optimized for the cutting process into PET at the moment or any other sources. So that's what we do.
But you can't produce large numbers of records that way. It's one at a time, right? So that would be a good record for something I might put out for my own singing, which two people would want. That would be good.
We do master cuts. It's the lacquers, but of course you can, because every machine can only produce a record in real time. But if you have a room with 10 machines, or if you have a room with 50 machines, or ideally you have many rooms all over the world that have 10 machines, you can produce millions of records. It's absolutely just another approach. And, it's bringing back the handcraft. You can have all different kind. It's not a competition to the vinyl pressed mass medium.
Yeah.
It's adding a new level of a bespoke, super fan, highest quality record, because even the sound engineer, he has an idea, he cuts the record, he listens to it, he changes it, he cuts it again. So the process and the possibilities to have new creative freedom and also new quality levels in a record, that's what we try to introduce.
And so it's an alternative distribution model is what you're working on, essentially.
It's a radical new approach in all aspects of record production and distribution. Also connecting the artists directly to end customers. It's just a modern approach, not limited or slowed down by the old thinking. Edwin Land, the founder of Polaroid, said, innovation is not having new ideas, it's forgetting about old ones.
That's a good quote. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So Andreas, you're at the intersection of record producers, manufacturers, the whole thing. And so you talk to all of these different people, and what do you find most of them are saying about the importance of sustainability and ecological responsibility in the production of records?
Yeah, it's true what you say. Like, I work for a company called Key Production. We are a manufacturing and design agency. So we're basically in the middle between manufacturers, pressing plants like Sonopress and Optimal and a lot of others, and the client, which can be an artist, a management, a label. And what we do is we develop products. We do standard normal pressings as well, but our goal is, or our main knowledge lies in developing crazy products, people that have ideas but don't know how to materialize them. That's when we come in. So when you asked about energy, we are not the ones trying to bring the consumption of energy down. We're investing energy, our own energy, in creating nice products. And from the very first beginning, the company was founded in 35 years ago. From the very first beginning, environmentally friendly and social, environmentally friendly production and social standards played a very big role in the genetics of the company, which has something to do with our founder. She is quite into trying to find out what is the best balance of product that is actually manufactured and how can you do it in a more sustainable way. So you're right, we're in the middle, and where we see our assets is to be some kind of an independent source. Of course, we are never fully independent because we are also running a business. We need to manufacture, we want to put stuff out, we like physical product, but we are some kind of an intermediate source of information. As you said, the CEOs of labels hardly know how a record is manufactured. So that's the first thing that you got to explain them. And when you get there, then you can talk about sustainability and environmentally friendly production and social standards. As a quite smart man once said, to solve a problem, the first step is identifying there is one. And that's where we see our assets. So we have been quite on the forefront in identifying issues in sustainability. We were one of the first companies that invested in environmentally friendly production. We marketed bio-based vinyl as the first company internationally with a campaign. We are members of several trade organizations like the VRMA and the Vinyl Alliance, who have formed working groups on their own, identifying issues, doing studies about sustainability of carbon footprinting, waste management. We are members in all these working groups. The wider musical industry on the label side has projects like the Earth Percent project run by Brian Eno, or the Murmur funding project founded by labels, the Music Climate Pact, and we're members and active in all these organizations, and there's a few that we're even leading. So I think that answers the question what we do.
Yeah, well, that's the most important thing that I was interested in, which is the interest of these various groups in sustainability and how important that is in what they're doing. Because years ago, it wasn't even a consideration. You just wanted to make records and get them out, and it didn't matter how much it cost, to the energy cost, because energy was cheap and no one cared about those things. But now it's really a big part of the whole process.
It's really the case that energy was all this cheap. Energy was expensive years ago as well, compared to the revenue that you can make on a record. I mean, it is significantly more expensive on a nominal level, but compared to income and household income and everything, it's not that much more expensive nowadays. And when you do the next step and ask about prices of records, that's a whole different discussion. If you go back in time and you see that how much a record was in the late 60s, early 70s, compared to your income or what a beer in a pub did cost, records are significantly cheap nowadays compared to back in the day.
That's a good point. And that's a point I always talk to when I see people online saying records are crazy. It's $35 for a record. $4.98 in 1968 dollars. Today is $35 or something, or even more. So records are not that expensive.
Which is, yeah, but I mean, when you ask about the discussion, like how it all of a sudden became a topic talking about sustainability, it's a topic in society. That's what we're talking about. Yeah. We invested a great deal of discussion in mankind to understand something like climate change, waste management, and
I would go as far as say 90% of mankind has understood that we do need to do something nowadays, and it's not about saving the planet, because the planet would probably be better off without us. It's more like saving the planet for our species to survive. And I think we have understood this now, all of us, right? So now we're getting to the point where we need to measure and compare and balance actions that we can do. And usually when I talk about stuff like this, I'm prepared to talk about the word sustainability. Unfortunately, it says environmentally friendly now on the screen, but I'm still going to use that word because we're using sustainability always in an environmental context. What it isn't automatically all environmental. Sustainable means something that stays forever, that can be used forever, that we can have joy from for a lot of times. And the other aspect, and that's when it comes to sustainability, is human culture is something that we need to preserve, because that separates us from the animal kingdom, right? Is if we want to try, or if we want to save our species and we want to survive, then we also need to make sure that our culture survives. Otherwise, we don't need to do that. So if we want to preserve our culture, then we need to find a file format to store the information. Music is a very big part, if not the biggest part of human culture. And we need a sustainable file format to preserve that culture, the music. And we have that format, and that is a record. There is no other file format that supplies the same efficiency, the same sustainability, and the same assets. Not tapes, no CDs, floppy disks. Who remembers them? No one does, right? The information wouldn't be stored forever, but it is stored forever on a record. If in 10,000 years some aliens fly in here and want to know about what we've been, what was mankind like, what culture, what music did they consume, and they find a record, they would be able to extract the information.
They could play it with a pine needle.
Yeah, that's why there's a record in Voyager 2 on the way to foreign civilizations and not a Spotify account.
But ironically, I think our industry gets hit with the, using up a lot of energy and all the other ecological things, because people see vinyl records as just ridiculous indulgence when you can stream everything, and we don't need, these people with these records, they're living in another time, and it's a waste of energy.
To preserve these cultural assets on a record, it should be made of a material that lasts. And PVC is proven to last at least 100 years and can be recycled over and over again, and is not, as other plastics, hygroscopic, that leads to a degradation over time. That is a big point in using PVC as a durable file format for a vinyl disc. And vinyl discs are called vinyl discs because they're made of vinyl.
What do you say about that?
Yeah, I would say, first of all, I fully agree. And talking about sustainability in this industry, it's always a question, is it a push or pull factor? And maybe 10 years ago, it wasn't so much in the focus of the labels and consumers, but it was already in the focus of the artists for a very long time before. And if companies like ourselves, Optimal Media, others, would have come up with great solutions in more sustainable material production processes like 10, 15 years ago, we might have had a big deal of convincing stakeholders in this industry. Today, it's the other way around. Today, it's the consumers' demand, it's the labels' demand, it's the ESG reports. Everybody is familiar with ESG, I guess. They are all demanding. This is like a pull factor. They want to have this product. So this is quite a good time. We do not need to convince them about this is a durability of a certain material or this has other LCA factors in it. No, there is definitely the demand. People, consumers, they really are keen on having a great contribution to nature, about responsibility in others. This is a great thing about it. On the other hand, it's our task now to take this and have a serious approach what can be contributed. And on PVC, I'm a little bit skeptical on this. It's the easiest task is for everyone just to open up any AI chatbot or whatever and ask the question, what is problematic about PVC? And there comes a list of arguments. This is not my message, but I just mean we have to be open. If there's a factor to look at the material, if we have alternatives, why not offering alternatives? If they want a more sustainable process, great deal. But it does not stop there. Michael, I think this is just the beginning. It's about what is the package, what are the ways of distributing the products, how to get the product from A to B. Is it, we have the most sustainable production, let's assume, somewhere here in Europe, and then we fly the LP record to Australia. Wow, we destroy everything on the sustainability factors before. So therefore we have something to see the general, the overall picture, local production for certain markets, distribution, and also what is the supply chain look like? Where is the manufacturing? Where is the distribution center? Where is the retailer? Or where is Amazon? How many Amazon drivers, not publishing Amazon, but just as an example. And where is the whole supply chain going to? So therefore, we have to have the general thing. And one more example. It's only about 1-2 years ago, and we were approached also on a project. Hey, there is a, let's say, plastic foil on the shrink wrap around the product. This is fossil-based polyethylene or polypropylene. Can we do this of a more sustainable plastic material like sugarcane-based foil? Yes, it's possible. And so we put a lot of emphasis talking to our vendors. What about sugarcane-based shrink wrap foil? It's available. It's a standard today, so there's nothing special.
Yep.
And just 2 weeks ago, Peter, you know this probably, some big software giants, they said, we skip the plastic foil totally. They just gave the order, no plastic foil at all around, no shrink wrapping. So I just want to say, it's still in the process. There's not a stage with a set in stone now. I think this is so great that we have new developments. It's a steady continuation. So we will further develop, and maybe the product looks different in 5 years. And who knows, Peter?
And you have to see the bigger picture. When it comes to this plastic foil, it's true, plastic foil is unnecessary, but it prevents the product from having fingerprints or being damaged in the store.
So you're talking about shrink wrap, what people call shrink wrap.
Shrink wrapping. And this little bit of extra carbon in the foil, I think it's still better than to throw away the whole product because it's unsellable. Mm-hmm. And that has to be taken in consideration as well. It's not that plastic is always bad. Yeah. And then you have to see the carbon footprint of a record of any material, any like virgin material. It's less than 1 kilogram CO2 per record. You have, and it's with all the manufacturers in Europe. Mm-hmm. A glass of milk, a big glass of milk has the same footprint. You can drink that once, but you can play a record over and over and over again without any additional footprint, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Also, maybe the British Empire had this all under control when EMI was able to set up pressing plants in all of their places that they owned all around the world, and then they would send a tape there and records would be produced locally. Was that
yes.
Should we have an empire again to produce records?
I think in what you mentioned, that there is demand from the industry, that's also the biggest problem, because as we know, it will never be within the industry to change the industry. So that's, the industry demands you to have a shrink wrap. The industry demands you to keep the same prices. So this is just ridiculous. If you really go into solving all the problems of sustainability, that's going to add costs. And these are costs that have to be communicated to the end customers. And they are willing to pay more. We have learned that lesson. Organic food, 10 years ago, it's just for the bobos, who want to watch farmers in black and white pictures having potatoes. Nowadays, it's a billion business. And the people have learned that if they want to have real sustainable products, without any compromise in the industry, they have to pay more. So we have to start introducing a new price tag on the records. If you want to have this record that is the best ever created archival pressures. Back in the days, it was the piece of art for the poor people to collect, to do it. Give it a new price tag so we can do all the things in production right and not are forced to make another shortcut, another shortcut, another shortcut. The industry, let's not talk about vinyls, bottles. Alpla, I had a lot of meetings with Alpla, it's the biggest manufacturer of plastic bottles. They could do amazing things if the industry would support it, but they couldn't even convince Sprite to not have a green bottle because a green bottle already adds a lot of problematic in the recycle process. The industry is not at all interested in really solving the problem. They just want to add a little more price tag without paying more to the industry. So it will never really change. So that's what we have to do from outside the industry to let the artists know. So last week I met Billie Eilish finally personally because she and her mother are really, pushing the ass of the industry. And for the first time, I explained to her what it is all about. Nobody's mentioning the creation of, for example, the electroplating. Little silver, little electroplating chemistry. That's also part of it. Don't hide it.
That's definitely part of it, sure.
Yeah, so let's just open a clear conversation of explaining the reality. And as they don't want to go to pressing plants, bring the reality into their living rooms so they understand the principles.
I just published a big video about electroplating and silvering and that whole thing. It shows people what goes on. Yeah. And most of those companies that I talk to are very conscious of the chemicals they're using and the retaining of the chemicals when they're finished. And the states like California are very specific about how those chemicals get recycled. So all of this is being done.
I love the video with Coldplay, very important, super nice story from the collection of the bottle in the river in Mexico, whatever. But, it's just part of the truth. I think the next generation, they are grown up to really understand the whole truth. The same to the meat industry. Show them the whole truth so that the people who do it right can separate themselves for doing it right, but then this also will have a different price tag. That's the way it is. And I think the young generation, they are ready to pay for that. They are ready to be part of it.
Absolutely. So one good thing is that when vinyl came back, it came back from a very small group of people that were doing it. It was able to build itself up responsibly, way more than it was in the earlier days when everybody was just building pressing plants and doing whatever they wanted to do. So today it's much more concentrated and everybody involved has a spotlight on what they're doing, and it's good for everybody. And the young people that's what I hear from young people. They're very concerned and involved in wanting to.
This is just a prototype of what we are working on. It's a 10-inch. It's all made of recycled paper, and it has these foils in there, so that's the way. It's 10-inch, just cut on one side. It has the screen print on the other side, and it's gonna be €72. And it's a very special, beautifully, completely handmade. €72.
€72, is it?
72
€2.
So
not cheap.
Not cheap, but even the paper, we go to the natural paper. The printing color we use, it's all handmade, small quantities. As a count, it's like sourdough bread compared to toast bread. It's something different. It's you cannot make millions, but you can add the value, and I think everybody will really profit from that. To really take the customer as a partner to show him what it is all about, and the artists.
Well, right now we have two chains going on in vinyl production. Like you can buy a Steely Dan record for $22. Or you can buy the same record for $150, and they sound very different from one another. The packaging is very different, and you can do it multiple ways for different audiences once you identify the audience.
By the way, we also include the music in the record, which is the groove cut out of the record.
As much as I appreciate a luxury product like this, that has... Because it's €75. I mean, we don't need to discuss that. I have.
What is a luxury? Let's define luxury.
Is all around you here where there's $1 million stereos.
I have to disagree on another point that you made. Yes, we all know once we want to do something more sustainable, it costs more money. That's what we've been used to now. but it is wrong. And we all know that. The discussion is going on, since you mentioned the food industry. The food industry is challenged by NGOs quite massively on that part, because why is a sustainable product, an environmentally friendly product, more expensive? It should be the other way around, because it does less harm to the environment and less harm to mankind.
If you look at the cost beyond the actual physical thing,
if we don't get to the point where the real costs are assigned to the product, then we will always fall for sustainability and environmentally friendly production methods to be a marketing instrument. That's what it is. At the moment, the industry, you're right about that, the industry is changing, but not with the same force that they should be. And from a governance perspective, we need to change the approach. We need to get to a point where the real costs are assigned to a product, and a product that is not environmentally friendly and puts a significant harm to the environment needs to be more expensive, because there's costs involved. Costs of recycling, of cleaning, of manufacturing. So I do understand that at the moment, a lot of industry players, labels, artists need to push the agenda forward and also demand from their clients maybe to pay a little bit more, but it shouldn't be the way. We all need to work on that to get to a point of governmental influence to put the real costs to a product. And we are arriving there. I mean, you mentioned ESG. Certificates is the first step, but there is much more steps. Certifying environmentally friendly supply chain. But I'm quite hopeful, the ever optimist I am, that in a couple of years, something like bio-based PVC that is made from recycled cooking oil that goes into the ethylene production.
There is some of that. There is some of that now, isn't there?
Will be the standard. It is the standard in a lot of.
It doesn't solve any problems.
No, it doesn't solve any problems, but it's going to be a standard in plastic manufacturing, and we're not going to solve a problem from. In a couple of years, but there is these little steps that need to get a certain price tag attached to it, to come back to what you just said.
That's tough to do because there's something ethereal about that. It's not the actual.
When it comes to this bio-based material, it does solve a problem, because when you do vinyl or PET out of bio-based prefabricated materials or pre-materials, then you're using plants that have consumed CO2 before it is locked in the plastic. So they really take CO2 out of the air and lock it in the product. And as long as the product is not burned, it stays in the product. And people have to understand that.
That's also abstract, just like saying, let's put the cost of something into the product. It's difficult, especially in the United States. That's being turned around backwards, and costs are being shown to be, this is what it costs to do this. What about the environmental costs? That's nonsense. That's what's happening.
I understand. I mean, that's what I'm saying.
Easy to do that, too.
Unfortunately, and to this point, and where's the trend right now going to? This is a difficult and very complex question, and not to forget about the price point. And to your comment, we believe there are many roads which lead to Rome. So therefore, I would not say there's one right or wrong approach or whatever. And there are certain products, if we think about special editions, I think this is one of the strengths of this industry, to have a special edition. And there's definitely market even for products in the price tag of 72 euros. Why not? You always find somebody who thinks this is a piece of art and I really want this. So nothing wrong with this. Different price points, all good. But how do we change it with the behavior and with the order structuring and so on? And I think there's one example which really makes clear there's definitely room to bring it all together. And having in mind, Andreas, the ESG, which is sometimes also embedded, let's say, in the people's bonus schemes of our customers. This does mean if they improve the carbon footprint factors for the ESG, they get their bonus in the end of the year, regardless what they really think about sustainability. But I think it's a good measurement also to be active in this. And what has happened? Some of the labels have been promoting and reducing the weight of the LP record. We have seen the 180 gram for a very long time. This was like the high-end standard. And what we have all, I think, seen in the last recent years is, it's going down to 140 gram. Nothing wrong with quality and other aspects, but it reduces the impact and the material by 40 gram.
But why?
And isn't this a good deal for environment? And this is, I think, a brilliant example. Everybody's happy because it's also reducing the cost. And now you have everybody on board.
Given a choice, they would take the lighter weight because they think it sounds better. So that's it.
What you just said is like a very interesting point, because the discussion about 180 to 140 grams, that discussion has been going on for a long time.
Yes.
And but I would say over the last 2-3 years, it really did sink in. And why did it sink in? Because there was an insane amount of explanation out there. It was all over social media. It has been so widely discussed that it is, even from a quality perspective, it's absolute nonsense to press a record on 180 grams.
Correct.
But it took time.
Yes.
And this is what we all learned in our industry and all other industries and businesses as well. We need to constantly talk about, and we need to measure proportionality of all these different assets. You said shrink wrapping. Others might say renewable energy in manufacturing, transport. And we all know record manufacturing is so complex, and even like all the peripheral business is super complex. We can't just go out and promote local manufacturing if the record needs to get to the plant before it becomes a record. It doesn't make sense to manufacture locally if I import my compound from Thailand over the whole planet. So we need to basically measure, is like, in this special case, where's the plant? Where's the supplier of record pressing compound? How do they transport it? If I see pressing plants in the Netherlands, for instance, there's one of the biggest record compound suppliers is in the Netherlands, and they supply the Dutch pressing plants directly with a hydrogen-powered truck. That is really sustainable. And that's just one example. And so there's a lot of things that we always need to talk about, like how do we balance it out? Our industry is approached by so many people to talk about recycling. How can records be recycled? Can we please stop that? I mean, how many records are being thrown away over the year? Yes, there is a couple of 100,000 records that end up in recycling plants, but it is less than 1% compared to piping, flooring, window frames. A record is not made to be recycled. We should talk about how we manufacture and produce it more environmentally friendly, and a big part is transport. The VRMA and the Vinyl Alliance have a carbon footprinting group, and they did a study last year and found out that over 60% of the carbon footprint of a record goes down to transport. So this is where we can make an impact. This is what we need to tackle, and not the 7 grams carbon footprint, CO2, 7 grams and 3 grams of material weight of a shrink wrapping. So we can leave it, and it might be a little bit of step, but it's not going to make an impact. Transport is making an impact. Energy consumption, what Optimal does, what you do, like solar panels on your roofs, being able to switch between electricity and gas. So this is what we need to talk about. But is this not that one panel that is going to solve the problem? It's those 200 panels that we do over the next years.
It's disappointing.
Let's get involved in the war in Ukraine. Let's solve some really important things. You got any? No, we all agree that packing records and then shipping them, pressing them in one place and then shipping them all the way across the world doesn't necessarily make sense on one level, but it makes sense on other levels.
It still makes sense if you ship them by a ship.
Yeah.
If you ship them by plane, that's unnecessary, and usually it only happens if somebody is not meeting the deadline.
Deadlines, right?
Yeah.
Things people want them right away.
Usually it's the artist.
But this is stuff that we do. This is stuff that we struggle with on a daily basis, like working with labels and explaining to them, look, during the pandemic, when it took you like 3-4 months to get a record, you learned that an advanced planning makes sense. Plan 6 months in advance. Pandemic over, they've all forgot about it. Now they're sometimes planning with like 4 weeks lead time. So this is where we need to train people on the label side. We need to train people or explain to people on the consumer side, don't order your record from big suppliers or big warehouses like Amazon. Go to your local record store. Not only you support a local business, it's also a lot more sustainable.
But the labels are involved. The labels are trying to kill that now. They want to sell direct, and they want to not let the stores sell the records, and that's another problem. But that's a whole different conversation for a different panel. But it is an annoying thing that's
well, I was just saying, like, there is a balance and there's proportions in it. There is so many aspects of it that involve the whole industry. Why it is so important that we constantly keep talking about it.
Has there ever been an industry-wide kind of convocation like this where everybody involved in this gets together from all around the world? It's never happened.
The Making Vinyl Conference.
Okay.
Happens twice a year, once in the US, one time in the US and one time in Europe.
It's still a small
and
group of
Vinyl
people.
Alliance meetings.
And there's the two industry bodies, the Vinyl Record Manufacturers Association and the Vinyl Alliance, that where all the big manufacturing plants are associated, and also peripheral businesses. There's labels and artists involved. They tackle all these issues over the course of the year with different focus. And twice a year, the industry gets together at the Making Vinyl Conference. Bit of a shameless self-promotion because I'm the director of the European Making Vinyl Conference,
Which I go to every year.
which happens in the Netherlands in September, and the American edition is in a couple of weeks
Do you
in
think
Memphis.
all of this should be made more apparent to the record buying public to know about all these organizations and what's being done? Because I don't think it's done at this point. It's still
yes.
talking within ourselves.
I mean,
Within yourselves.
as I said, like solving a problem, first step is identifying there is one and what is it. So that's what's being done in the, I would call it like the inner circles of the industry. You get together, you talk quite honestly, scientific-based data, and then you create concepts how to reach the public, how to reach your clients and customers who order the records from you. That's a phase, or that's a process that we're in. I mean, you'd switch on social media, you see all these influencers talking about it. They're talking about sustainable records, they're talking about the product itself. So it's constantly sinking in.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree, it needs to be much more public, but there is efforts. There's Record Store Day who puts it in people's heads.
Yep.
There is the Harlem Vinyl Festival, which is a consumer-oriented festival. And these things take time, but they're constantly happening.
Now, both of your companies are involved in making vinyl places. And are you happy with how that works out? Or do you think they're getting involved in your business where you don't want them involved in your business?
Well, I think it's quite good.
It's good.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think the interest, the global interest in this beautiful product, so to say, is phenomenal. And we really support all these activities. And we are very happy with the activity of the Vinyl Alliance to bring people, stakeholders together. And this does not start or end with the manufacturing of the vinyl or with the pre-steps like mastering, DMM cutting and other things. I think it continues with hardware equipment. It continues with all the aspects of retail, of supply chain, and to build the bridge also. It's fantastic to be at this high-end show here in Munich to see what is all possible. There's a lot of learning also. When we had our first walks on the show yesterday, to see all this equipment like turntables, it's fantastic. It's fantastic. And it's not this one way which is the right approach. I think we have seen many different approaches of doing it. It's fantastic.
But what about the fact that today there's only one manufacturer in the world of lacquers? Does that concern you? Does that concern you?
Well, it does concern me a little, but there's an alternative. There's a DMM that we can also use in our cutting suite. And but there should be another one, but another high quality one. It makes no sense to have an inferior product with more background noise or something like that. Nobody would want to buy a product made on that inferior lacquer. Nobody.
Yes, that's true.
Can I have a question? Who of you visited the last manufacturer of lacquer?
In Japan?
Whoever visited them?
No.
This is already ridiculous. The whole industry is dependent on one production plant, and
It wasn't their plan. Of course.
nobody has ever visited it. I was there.
Did you go to the Japanese company?
Of course, I was there. No, they are the most important people for my Mastercard project because I need a lacquer for everybody. But what I wanted to say, I really think that we are sitting here, and this is very positive. A lot is changing, and I'm really happy that that's happening. But that said, what really has to happen is something like happened to the German car industry or the car industry. There has to be somebody from outside, a crazy guy. So I'm not comparing myself to Elon Musk, but especially nowadays, but to kick ass. And to talk to the customers, and the customers have to increase the pressure. Industry should not be happy. Industry should be scared. And they have to be forced in changing something. Otherwise, it will take another 10 years, and we discuss labels of whatever. I think this is the chance to really introduce the truth to the customers and together develop the solutions and not hide anything, to go out, and we have to increase the pressure to really also force the labels to change something really radical, and not because of their next income or the stock market or whatever.
Unfortunately, the labels are profit-driven to the degree that there are records being manufactured today that sound horrible because the labels or the producers, whoever, don't want to invest to have two separate masterings, one for vinyl and one for their digital side. So they're taking these horrible crushed files and pressing records from them, which is another topic for another subject.
But they are dependent on the artist. So the biggest power are in the hands of the artist. And if these young artists, like
they need educating because they don't know.
I'm not doing any recycle whatever anymore. I just want to cut my records. Something's going to change. I promise you.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
We do have some problems, and we are solving our problems. But so where do you see things in 5 years and 10 years?
Good question. I think it will be a fragmented field, and so we will see like a manifold of different production techniques. I believe that the injection molding technique will have a major share of this. Will it be more than 50%? Probably not in 5 years. In 10 years, possibly. Because first of all, there's too much capacity on the old compression mold technology right now in the world, and this could have a major influence also on pricing developments, that the conventional technique will go down in price due to the overcapacity in the market. This is what I expect. Pricing for the product will get under pressure, that's for sure, due to the fact of too much capacity. On the new techniques like injection molding, we will see I would say in about 2 years, we will see at least 4 or 5 companies globally doing this. And at least there are 2-3 companies by end of this year already starting with this. This is a given fact. I think this will be a complementary approach of various techniques. On the lacquer situation, I'm not concerned at all, because the DMM cup, which was developed in the 70s by Teldec, is a phenomenal technology. There's a lot of subjective saying about lacquer cutting is better and so on. But if you take a step back, DMM should not be underestimated. So, and this is the good of
early days of DMM. The people doing the cutting didn't understand the technology well enough to compensate for the issues.
And there's only a limited number of DMM cutting links in the market.
But the first ones that I heard were like, but that's only because it's like everything else. But it's not like that anymore. It's good.
Okay, there's some difference in the dB and what is the frequency. Of course, and we all know about this. But I think it's complementary. There's one technology, another one, and so I'm not concerned about the mastering and pre-cuts. There will be a lot of things. Will there be something like a vinyl record, an LP record, regardless of material, on demand? Yes, we have seen some developments some years ago already. It's a question how this market will develop. Why not in a niche? It could be a nice little niche. On the mass market, and there will be a mass market, definitely it will require different approaches, like the compression mold, which we have by large, like a capacity more than 400 million units per year, I think globally, and it's good to have this. And by injection molding, where we have global capacities right now, I would say below 10 million. So this gives a little bit of comparison. There's a long way to come up to 20, 30, 50 million in capacity. So this is not happening overnight, but it's complementary. So therefore, I think we have a great field. And it's about like bringing on consumers to this beautiful product again. And we do a lot of initiatives like from the Vinyl Alliance, VMA, they are all very much keen on bringing it forward and to find also the next generations to jump on board. Because look in our audience, ourselves, only few people below 40 years old. So therefore, I think it will be one of our tasks to make this a popular thing for the future, also for next generation, to keep it.
The great thing is that kids are self-generating into the vinyl world. That's what I see. One talks to the next, and they get together, especially young girls get together, and they have record parties. I talk to those people a lot, and it's self-sustaining. That's one of the great things about this. You talk about the mass market, though. What is the mass market for records is still a tiny, tiny little niche, even though... Well, it's still small.
No,
right?
no, I think I have to disagree. I have to disagree. I think on the global market, in revenues, streaming generates 80+% of the market. Yes, we all know this. Yeah. But if the rest on physical product is 10 to maybe even 20% of the revenues, it's significant to the music industry. It's significant, and even more significant to the artist. Because streaming, yes, is one thing, but to have a product like a record, this is a different story.
And
they love it.
And streaming has a footprint too, and you have nothing in your hands.
Yes.
Right?
So therefore, I think it's definitely a significant market.
And footprint is significant. Andreas can tell you all about it.
I mean, it's quite easy to find out the carbon footprint of a streaming service because they're publishing it.
Yeah.
Let's take Spotify. They published it last year. 2024, the annual carbon footprint of Spotify was close to 200,000 tons. And now compare that to the global capacity for vinyl manufacturing, which is 400 million records, you say. I would agree, roughly.
Capacity.
So let's say like 400 million records were produced, each one having a carbon footprint of something between 0.7 and 1.2, depending on what study you take for the basics. So that means Spotify alone has the same carbon footprint as half of the global capacity, and they're just one streaming supplier. There's others. So I would rightfully go out and say like, all the streaming services combined together have a higher carbon footprint than all the record manufacturers together.
Yes.
It is to be taken
with that point.
It is to be taken with a grain of salt. All right, I'm all for transparency, and we need to transparent here as well. Streaming is a usage-based measurement. When we compare it to the manufacturing of the record, it's not quite accurate because we would need to take in the consumption of the record as well when people listening to it. That creates a carbon footprint as well. But using a record player with, let's say, a standard amplifier, not one of these like big tube leads down there.
I insist on that kind of amplifier.
The carbon footprint of playing a record is so much lower than listening to Spotify because that has an influence in powering their service and whatever, and the energy consumption. So we might add like a little bit of carbon footprint in playing and listening to the record, depending how often you do that. But still, I would go as far and say like the record manufacturing industry has no higher carbon footprint than any streaming service combined.
So where do you see things in 5 years, Peter?
I see a stable market for records and a further increasing demand for special products like colored records, sprinkles, manually made records like picture discs, stuff like that, and collector's items.
And that's less music oriented and more collectability tactile.
It will be both, but we are collectors and hunters.
Always.
So, and we want to show off what we have in our shelves. Yeah. So it will be both.
Yeah. And so what you're doing, where do you see what you're doing in 5 years?
You know, what I think, we didn't talk about it today, but the most important role for records in the future, and where I have big hopes that this will, be aware to many more people, is the quality of the listening experience. Because, that's part of the thing that, a good vinyl, no matter if it's pressed or cut, can really create these listening experiences that are now disappearing, and it can give back value to the music industry. This is the biggest problem of streaming. You don't even listen to whole songs, the quality of the devices. So for me, I'm fighting or spending a lot of time with the innovation of the records, mainly to, maybe you call it luxury, but I think it's a luxury to give the people something that makes them feel better, that they can touch in a more and more digital world. And my hope is that, by bringing in new technologies of all kind, we can inspire the next generation themselves, so that we all, the stupid idiots, can finally, drink our drinks and hand over also the innovation part and the rethinking part of how to produce these records in the best way possible to the next generation. I'm a big fan of the next generation solving the problem and us just passing on all
Our problems to them.
not only our problems, but also, the inspiration for solutions.
So,
Our
Andreas,
problem is
where do
anyhow.
you see things in 5 years from what you're doing with all these different organizations? Where do you
I think what you said has quite an importance. That a younger or newer generation is getting hooked on the tactical experience of a product that they can own. I think it goes in two different ways, and they might even separate each other much more. You're going to see people listening to vinyl because of the exceptional quality and sound, plus you are concentrating much more on the content. You have to go in a special place where that record player is set up. You have to switch it on. You sit down. You can't do much work while listening to an album, because in 20 minutes you have to turn around. So there's a lot more concentration on the content. And this is what I like to see. Quality is one part, listening experience is one part, but actually listening to the artist who invested a great deal in writing this song and playing this song, appreciating the art, appreciating the culture embedded therein. And that is, as I said, it's one way people are going to experience that. They're going to learn that, the younger generation. And the others might consume vinyl in a comparable way to streaming, but still wanting to own it. There is a lot of anecdotal talks about
to
it.
support the artists, just to support, even if they don't play it, to support the artists.
I mean, everything I know is purely anecdotal, but I know a few younger people, and they tell me they like to buy the record. But we all know the stories of people buying a record and not even owning a record player.
Yeah, but most of that's not.
But they still do. So there is a tactical experience that has a future, and then there's a meta level as well, which is very, very important for me personally. If I own a record, it's a decentralized filing system. It can't be controlled by a hegemonial entity.
And no one's tracking you. No, when you finish playing the record, you turn your phone on.
No
and
one
it's not
can
there.
switch it off. And I know that the people making these records, from the label up to the manufacturing plant, they're usually like mid-sized, small entities who do it for the special product. There is no shareholders from questionable businesses in record pressing plants. But I see what people running streaming services, where their money comes from and where they're investing. And do I really want these people control my consumption? Do I really want these people to switch off my account at some point, even if there's just that risk? It doesn't need to happen, but there is a risk of it. And we all see what's going on in the world. I mean, how hegemonial structures are taking over, and that concerns me. So
how about when they take the mix that you like, that you're streaming, and they say, we have a different mix we like better, and they put it on and get rid of your mix? That's a big problem too.
It's a big problem.
That's why owning it, what you want, and having it is the best way to.
I mean, giving my music to someone who has control of where it is distributed, how it is distributed. They're even controlling the price tag. They're deciding what they pay me for my music.
Yeah.
And if I put out a record and I go on tour as an artist, I can say I'll sell this for 15 euros or for 25, and I have full control over it. And the people buying it, they own it forever. They can do whatever they want with it.
Or give it to somebody else. For
Or
a
give it
second
to
use.
someone else.
Do that with a stream.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I think we spent a lot of time talking about this subject. I think we've accomplished a lot. I think everybody that was here and everybody's listening at home, when you get to stream this, will have learned a lot, because I know I did. And I'm hearing things that I started screaming about 40 years ago coming true today, which is the greatest part about this. And let's go upstairs and see all the solar-powered turntables up there. Oh, there are none.
Wow.
It's another story. Well, I want to thank you all for participating in this panel. I think it was really, really useful. I learned a lot, and I enjoyed it. Thank you, and thank you.
Thanks for the invitation.
And thank everybody who came here rather than running around the show. And now go run around the show and have a good time. Thank you.